Hi, my name is Max Williams, and I'm a licensed realtor here in Richmond, Virginia with Robinson and Harrison Company. I put together this video to go over some home search tips that hopefully will be helpful for you if you are currently looking for a home. The internet has drastically changed over the past several years how individuals look for and ultimately find homes. One of the frustrations that a lot of people share is that a lot of the listings that they come across, unfortunately, are already sold or not available. And there are a number of reasons for this, but the biggest is probably the way the internet works. If an agent has a listing and they put it on certain sites, those sites will what we call syndicate that listing. And basically that means they will send it to a dozen or more other sites. Once that happens, those listings are gone. They are not in control. The agent doesn't have control of them, and they are out there indefinitely and ultimately come up on searches and result in disappointment for individuals that are looking for a home. A couple ways around this. Number one is to stick with a good site that is going to purge those old listings. Realtor.com pulls listings directly from our MLS. The MLS is called the Multiple Listing Service. That is the database that local realtors use to share their information with other real estate professionals. And ultimately, Realtor.com is the consumer side of the MLS. Once those homes are sold, the Realtor.com system automatically takes them off of that site. So it is by far the most accurate site. A lot of the rankings show it as being the number one real estate site for consumers. So that would be my recommendation, to stick with Realtor.com. I don't pay them to have my listings there. Some agents do pay for enhanced services, so I have no reason to recommend them other than it just simply is going to make it simpler for the consumer to get good, accurate information. The other way to simplify your search, and probably the most powerful, is to simply use a buyer's agent. And you may be wondering, what is a buyer's agent? A buyer's agent is an agent that represents you as the purchaser exclusively. Let's say, for example, you were riding down the street, or you saw in the newspaper or on the internet a home that was listed by John Doe. John Doe is typically the listing agent. He represents the seller. His job is to get the best price, best terms, and protect his seller. If you call, he's going to be nice to you. He's going to help you with the transaction, but his ultimate goal is to work for the seller. Obviously, you can see that there's a conflict there. If you're trying to get the best deal possible for you and have somebody protect your interests, that's not going to happen if you go direct to the listing agent. If you have a buyer's agent, number one, they know exactly what you're looking for. They can help you in that regard as far as your search. They know the red flags that come up on our system that you're not necessarily going to see. And give me an example. Today's marketplace, we have a lot of short sales. And as you may already know, a short sale simply means that the seller is looking to sell their home for less money than they owe. That requires their lender's approval. The lender is basically going to come out short on their payoff versus what is owed on the property. This process can take many, many months. I've seen 6 months, 7 months, or more. Sometimes they will have an offer, they will accept the offer, and then send that offer to their lender. The lender, before deciding what they're going to do, if they're going to accept the short sale or not, will actually foreclose on the property. The left hand is not talking to the right hand, and it is just a complete mess in many situations. An agent can simply look on the MLS and say, hey, I know you like this property, but it is a short sale. You're not going to see that in most cases on Realtor.com or Craigslist or any of the other sites that are available. It can save a whole lot of time and energy by just simply avoiding them if you have a limited window that you want to purchase your home in, and you don't want to wait potentially 6, 7, 8 months or more for a response from the bank. The other reason that it's a good idea to use a buyer's agent is it doesn't cost you anything in many cases. My firm does not charge the buyer a dime if we are working with you and you ultimately buy a house. The commission is paid by the seller. There are some firms that will charge the buyer a dollar amount in addition to the money they get from the sale. In my opinion, that's money basically you've thrown out the window, because there are plenty of firms and agents that don't have that. But you have to ask these questions up front, because it's not something that a lot of people think about or even know. They just assume that it's customary. It's not. It's a way for that firm to basically to make more money on the transaction. An informed consumer is a smart consumer. The other reason it's a good idea to use a buyer's agent is you have an extra set of eyes on that property. When I go into a home, it could be the most beautiful home in the world, but I'm looking at things totally differently than that buyer. The buyer's blown away with the layout, the colors, how they're going to lay out their furniture, how beautiful the backyard looks. I'm looking at things that are going to cost that buyer money in the near term, things that are telltale signs that there may be issues with that home. I'm not a home inspector, I'm not a contractor, but I know when something isn't quite right. Also, I'm looking at resale value. If they are completely in love with a home, but it's very, very, it's a very poor location, or there's something about it that's going to affect resale, I'm going to mention that to them and let them know that this is something to think about. A lot of times we get caught up in the emotional side, and a good buyer's agent is going to completely ignore that, because it's all about very concrete facts and issues with the buyer's agent, and not the aesthetics necessarily that oftentimes will sway a buyer. A buyer's agent can give you a lot more information that you otherwise would not know. I'll give you another example. If an individual is interested in buying a home and getting ready to make an offer, I'm going to talk to that listing agent, and I'm going to not only just get basic information from them, but I'm going to probe as far as what the motivation is. Why do they want to sell? A lot of times listing agents will give up more information than they know just by asking the right questions. That's information that is crucial in many cases for my buyer to help make a good decision on where they want to be as far as their offer and what kind of terms they want to ask for. A lot of times people don't even think of some of the terms that can be requested that will ultimately save money and make the transaction much safer for the purchaser in the process. There is information that a buyer's agent can share that many individuals, even in the business, don't even know. Another example, went to a house not too long ago, and as we went in the front door, I noticed there was a small blue sticker. It was about 2 inches wide by 3 inches tall, and it had a couple dates on it. Most people would look at it and shrug and just keep moving. That sticker is actually from a company or an individual that is paid by the lender to go inspect that property when the owner falls into default. In other words, I knew by that sticker being next to the door that that home was delinquent, which means, of course, that the motivation level for that seller could be higher now, because if they don't sell the home, unfortunately, they may end up losing it. That means a more motivated seller potentially than otherwise. If they were current on their mortgage, they wouldn't nearly be as motivated in many cases. Little things like that you only know by being in the business and by having experience. Those things can translate into thousands and thousands of dollars benefit for the purchaser. One other thing that is very important when looking on the internet and coming up with value, I often have clients that'll say, oh, well, I saw on Trulia this house was worth X number of dollars. What Trulia doesn't know is the circumstances around that sale or those sales. I'll give you an example. You may have a subdivision and 4 homes recently sold for an average of about $250,000, except for one. That home sold for $125,000. All these homes were fairly similar in size and style. And by looking at that information, I could find out that one of those homes was sold from a father to a son. Basically, dad sold the property to his son for what he owed on it. Trulia does not know that relationship. Trulia just picks up raw numbers, conveys them to the public. Now the consumer has bad information because there was no research to go along with that. Buyer's agent can not only pull up those transactions, can pull up photographs, can tell a lot more information about each individual transaction. And if it came to it, I can even call the agents on those transactions and say, hey, what was going on with this property? It looked like a pretty good deal. Was it? What was the condition like? What was this like? I can ask all those questions, and agents work together all the time. There's a good chance I may have worked with that agent in the past. And at that point, they have no reason not to share with me exactly what the situation was. Truly, you can't do that. And the numbers that you see on automated valuation sites won't be able to share that with you either. A lot of people get mixed up between assessment and appraisal. Assessment is simply the number that the county or the city has put on the property for tax purposes only. It is not a good way to judge property value. I see properties all the time sell for $100,000 more than assessment, $100,000 below assessment. It is not a good way to judge value at all. An appraisal is done by a licensed appraiser here in the state of Virginia, and they have a report that's probably 12, 15 pages long. They have to compare 3 properties that have sold recently to the subject property, and they have a lot of different ways that they analyze and do additions and subtractions according to the amenities and the differences between those properties. A very detailed process, and it usually results in a very, very good way to come up with market value. A buyer's agent, in working with a buyer, is going to not do necessarily a full-blown appraisal, but a mini appraisal, which is also known as a CMA, a comparative market analysis. And that is a way that an agent can share with you, is that offer or is that asking price too high versus what has sold in the past. Everything in real estate is based upon what has happened recently in this area. That is where we come up with market value. I can do an in-depth research on those other homes that have sold. There are a number of different ways that we can break that down. Our tools that we have available are very, very strong in that respect. In closing, there were a few recommendations I would make for you if you're currently in your search. If you have a agent that's working for you, a buyer's agent, congratulations, that's wonderful. Make sure you ask them the tough questions. Make sure that you listen to their advice. If you have not moved forward that far yet in your process, the first thing I'd recommend is get pre-qualified or get pre-approved with a mortgage professional. As in every other industry, all mortgage professionals are not equal. They all do not have expertise in necessarily working with first-time buyers or investors. There are lenders that have special areas that they do a lot of business in. I'm often surprised when individuals call that are first-time buyers and have very average incomes, and no one has mentioned to them the possibility of getting a grant. Grants are widely available, and it's free money. If you make under X number of dollars, according to your family size, you will qualify. And it's shocking that people in the business don't recommend that buyers get that free money. It is a little bit more work sometimes for them, and it may slow the process down a little bit, but it's free money. So I'm a big advocate of making sure you don't leave anything on the table. You want to make this transaction the best financially that you can. Right now, interest rates are at record lows, and that coupled with free money, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Also, you want to educate yourself in the home buying process. I appreciate you sticking with me this far and learning about this process. But educated consumer is a smart consumer. You don't want to have things come up that you didn't know about, that were concepts that are very common in the business, but you didn't take the time to research, or you didn't ask the questions, or somebody simply didn't share that with you. You want this to be a fun, exciting time period in your life. You're getting ready to move into someplace you're going to call home. And we know that's where memories are made. That's where things happen in our lives that we'll reflect on forever. Also, good idea to determine exactly what it is that you must have and things that would be nice to have. For some individuals, it may be a school district. One of the beautiful things about real estate is you basically can pick what schools your children go to as a result of where you buy your home. And naturally, there's a lot of data available on school performance. You may have a district that you already have experience with and want to keep your child in that district. That's fine. We can do searches according to district very easily. I would also interview individuals that you're interested in working with. Whoever it is you use as a buyer's agent, make sure you're comfortable with them. You're going to be spending time, and you're going to want to make sure that you're comfortable with their style. Personally, my style is not to sell houses. My style is to provide information, to share my experience, make sure my buyers are protected, and negotiate like it was my money. That's my style. Some of my clients, they basically will communicate via text messaging with me primarily. Some, it'll strictly be email, and some, there's nothing like getting on the phone and talking to Max. And I'm comfortable with all of those. Whatever works for the client should be also a method that works, or a means that works for their buyer's agent. Use your buyer's agent, listen to them, and if they are experienced and professional, they're not going to steer you wrong. The benefits far outweigh the potential issues. If you're working with somebody and they're not quite right for you, let them know. No one really wants to work with someone where you find the process cumbersome or difficult. And that's part of the process, is making sure that you're a team, not only with your real estate professional, but with your lender, with who ultimately does your settlement. All of those parties have to work together. I'm proud of the companies that I work with and recommend for my buyers. They've got a long-standing track record of providing good, solid service, and are some of the best firms that are in the local area. So I'm very, very proud of the people that I recommend and work with on a daily basis. As I said earlier, my name is Max Williams, and I do work primarily with buyers here in the Richmond area. If you have found this information helpful, thank you. I appreciate sharing it with you, and would ultimately love to be able to represent you, or even answer any questions that you may have in this process. I can be reached at area code 804-402-7788. My website is richmondhouseinfo.com, and I would love to hear from you. I wish you all the best in your home search process and hope you have a wonderful day.